Hello everybody. This week's Torah portion is Parshas Emor. The Torah of this week's Parsha talks about the mitzvah of Kidush Hashem, to sanctify God's name. Kiddush Hashem is a mitzvah that's unique because, in a certain sense, it's really the goal of the entire Torah. Rashi writes that the whole reason why we were taken out of Egypt was to make a Kiddush Hashem. What does this mean? This means that the purpose of the Jewish people is to be a light to nations, to be a people who are spiritual role models for humanity. Therefore, Kiddush Hashem is a mitzvah to act as an example, an inspiration for other people, so that other people want to behave like us and have a relationship with Hashem. So wherever we go, whether it's at work, on vacation, in the street, at the store, it's our job to make a Kiddush Hashem, to be a role model, an example of how to behave in a compassionate, just, honest, holy way, and in that way spread light throughout the entire world. A Kiddush Hashem can actually save thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. One person's demonstration of what it means to be a moral Jew can save thousands of people. And the following story is a remarkable example of this. We know in the 1930s many Jews escaped Germany and Eastern Europe to go to what was then called Palestine. And there was a young German fellow, a young German Jew named Herbert Froelich. He lived in Haifa, and he stayed at a boarding house in Haifa. After a while, the owner of the boarding house came up to her and said, she ran out of rooms, and she wanted to ask him a favor. She wants to rent a room to this Gentile, and she wanted to know if Herbert would be willing to share his room with this Gentile. He rented the room, but she wanted to know if he would do her a favor. She could really lose the income. Would he be willing to share his room? And Herbert agreed. Herbert shared the room now with the only Gentile in the boarding house. He was a young student who came from Sweden to study the British banking system in Palestine. And for the next 6 months, Herbert and his roommates, non-Jewish roommates, they spent time together, invited this roommates for Shabbos meals, and they developed a very close relationship. Eventually, this young Gentile roommates eventually had to go back to Sweden. They had a very close relationship and respect for Herbert, and he gave him a ski cap. And he said, Herbert, I wanted to keep this cap as a reminder of my enduring friendship and my respect that I have for you. A few years later, we know World War II started, and the world turned a blind eye to the massacre of millions and millions of Jews. But there was one person who was remarkable in his ability to stand up and try to save Jews. That roommate, whose name was Raoul Wallenberg, who was a Swedish diplomat in Hungary, he saved, historians say, as much as 100,000 Jews from the Nazis. And Herbert Froelich was convinced that it was that relationship that he had with Raoul Wallenberg, the friendship that he built when he agreed to have him as a roommate in Israel. It was that relationship, that exposure, that Kiddush Hashem, that eventually resulted in saving hundreds of thousands of Jews. This story is recorded in a book called For Goodness Sake by Baruch Brul. And it's a remarkable example of how one Kiddush Hashem can be responsible for saving hundreds of thousands of people. Let's all take this message to heart. The way we behave can be responsible in spreading so much light and goodness across the world. Have a beautiful Shabbos.